Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's video is interesting because I had a lot of do-overs and you'll see. So anyway, I'm going to use this Altenew set called Halftone Hello, and I'm also using You Make My Tail Wag by My Favorite Things. I'm using this pup right here. I'm going to start by taking my Hello stamp and centering it on a piece of Stampin' Up! Whisper White cardstock using my grid sheet. I'm using Stampin' Up! Cardstock because I'm using Stampin' Up! Inks, and you always get the best results when you use those two in combination. My sheet is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but I'm going to be trimming it back. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this down. I did not need to do it again. I got a really nice impression. This is a fairly new ink pad. I quickly wanted to share with you that I'm storing my absorber in a Tupperware on my craft table because I felt like every time I put it down on paper. So I was always worried about where it was going. So now I don't have to worry. I just drop it in that Tupperware and everything's fine. So I lined up the insides of the H, the L, and the L to get the outline on top of the hello because I wanted it to line up just right. So I'm going to ink this up with some VersaFine Black Onyx ink. And you'll see when I press down here, I did a pretty good job, I think. It was a little tiny bit off, but not noticeable, so I decided to just go ahead and go with it. I did not use the MISTI for these other words of the sentiment because they were sticky. The stamps were sticky, and every time I touched them, they moved around. So I just went ahead and used some acrylic blocks. And I don't know if you could see, but I've got a piece of kind of watery ink that I got on my cardstock to the left of the H there, so I wasn't happy about that. And then when I stamped Friend, I thought, gosh, after it was done, I was like, it's a little too close to the hello for me. But I just went with it, and you'll see later what happens. But anyway, I'm going to take my dog. I'm going to stamp him in some Memento Tuxedo Black ink on some Neenah Solar White cardstock. That's always the cardstock I use for Copic markers. And I'm just going to color this guy with W1, W3, and W5. So I'm just going to start with the 5, then move in with the 3, and then the 1. For the rest of him, I wanted it to be white, but I want a little shadow. So I took the W1 and I just put it all around the edges, and then I took my Zero colorless blender and just blended the edge and just softened it up. For his nose, I just colored his whole nose with C9, which is a really dark gray, almost black. And then I wanted a little shine to it, like a highlight, so I took a C4, and it's hard to see in the video, but it does lighten up into a little spot there. Now, I don't have the dies that come with this set, but so I'm just going to cut mine out with a scissor. And now I've got my piece. I've got my dog cut out, and now I've got my panel here. And I also clear embossed. I forgot to turn my camera on when I did that, but I did clear emboss that to make it pop a little. I have 2 pieces of Stampin' Up! Black cardstock cut to 1/4 inch each. I did notice that the blue in the Brights collection of the Avery Elle went really well with the Pool Party ink, so I'm going to use that. So I decided to add these black pieces with ATG and decided it just wasn't working out because I just wanted a little bit to show, and I just didn't have enough room to move around. So when I peeled it off, I peeled the paper off. So that's my first mistake. So I just decided to cut that off and just work with it. I tried two-way glue pen, and that seemed to work really well. But the one thing I didn't like was that it kind of, because they're only 1/4 inch, it kind of created a bump underneath the white cardstock. I don't know if you can tell, but it's pretty short. So anyway, that's why I did that. But I went with it anyway. And now I'm taking the dog. I put some two-way glue pen on the bottom of his nose and just popped him across the top. So I have my card base here, which is Neenah cardstock folded, and I'm going to line up his ears just at the top edge. And I like to really be conscientious about how much paper I use, so I like to save as much as possible. So I'm just going to cut the strip that I need. So I'm going to mark it, and then I'll take my ATG and adhere it to the bottom of my card base. And this is 6 by 6 paper, so there's a little bit hanging off the edge. I'm just going to cut that off with a scissor. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm really not happy because the sentiment is in the middle and the dog is on the left, so there really isn't good balance. So I'm sort of considering what to do and decided to go ahead and recreate that hello panel. So same as I did before, I'm using the MISTI, and I'm going to stamp my hello with some Pool Party ink. And then I tried to line up the outline, but it was dirty, so I couldn't really see that well through it. And then in the end, I decided I didn't want to take a chance, so I just grabbed my Stamp-A-Mache. It comes with a plastic sheet and this like right angle block here that I've got on the left. So what you do is you adhere your clear stamp to the block, and then you use that right angle as a guide to stamp on the sheet. I used to use this all the time before the MISTI, and this way you can see when I place it down, I can see exactly where this is going to stamp, and I can make sure that it goes right exactly to the edge of the Hello inside color. So once I get it positioned correctly, I just put my right angle right there, that tool, and then when I stamp it, it's going to stamp in that same location because I still have it adhered to that block. So I'm going to ink it up with some VersaFine black onyx ink. You can see I'm being really careful not to touch and get ink on my cardstock, as I seem to be doing that a lot lately. Now this technique is really great. I love it, but it is prone to error sometimes. If anything moves, then it's going to be off. But if you're careful, it works great. So I'm going to go ahead and clear emboss this like I did the other one, heat it to set it, and then you can see that I could just take my absorber and it comes right off this plastic sheet, so it's reusable. And then I'm going to adhere this. Now instead of getting 2 strips of black cardstock, I just created 1 piece of black cardstock, and so I just matted this on top of that 1 piece. That way I didn't get any bumps. So that's another fix I made. And then I'm going to put my dog back on. So I had peeled him off the other card. I'll press him down at the top. Now you can see it's nice and balanced. Now I still haven't stamped those other pieces of the sentiment because I wanted to see where they would fit best. And I decided to place them in these locations, and again, you know, those stamps are kind of sticky. Every time I touched it, it kept moving. So I'm just going to put it on my block, and I'll stamp them both with the VersaFine black onyx ink. And my friend, I'm going to pull him down a little bit from the Hello so it's a little further away. I decided to pop this up, so I put some Scotch foam tape on the panel and a little dimensional on the dog head, and press this down onto my card base that I kept. I just used that same strip of pattern paper. And that is the card for today. So you could see the comparison to what I had before. I really like the new version much better. And that's why I usually create 2 cards. This time I only created 1 card. And so you actually got to see in action the difference between my first try and my second try. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.